By special request, I was asked to talk about chronic illnesses and how they relate to disability, especially with individuals who are trying to work either employed by an employer or self-employed. So, as I go into chronic illnesses, I also want to talk about compassionate allowances as well. Now, compassionate allowances are terminal illnesses like stage 4 cancer or neurodegenerative conditions like ALS or Huntington's. There's 300 different illnesses that meet the standard for a compassionate allowance. And in almost every circumstance, these are terminal illness cases. So they're fast-tracked. Within 2 weeks, SSA has a decision and they're approved for disability. I had one situation where a high school principal had stage 4 cancer and he couldn't qualify for disability because he's working and earning more than the substantial gainful limit. And he just continued to work, notwithstanding how sick he was. And he worked until the day he died. And what a goat he was. What a hero he was of persistence. And what a great example he was to those kids. So in most cases, though, with a compassionate allowance, if someone has a terminal illness, they're not working, so they're usually approved. So with chronic illnesses, these can qualify for disability. Chronic illnesses are things like RA or lupus or Crohn's or MS or psoriatic arthritis, Parkinson's, peripheral neuropathy, migraine disorders, IBS, celiac, cirrhosis, COPD, congestive heart failure. The list goes on and on. And what really comes into play here is the severity of the condition. The medical evidence needs to support that. The flare-ups, if they're frequent, the medical evidence should support that. The threshold of care where there's just a massive amount of time being spent getting care for the illness and inability to work as a result. So the medical evidence all has to support that. So then SSA will look at the case as usual. They'll look and try to determine whether or not the individual is, if they're working, if that income is above the substantial gainful limit, the SGA limit of $1,620 a month in gross income. If they're getting concessions from their employer, there's a chance that can be reduced using a percentage method to determine what percentage of their wage they're actually earning if the employer is providing concessions to them. Now, with regard to self-employed people, SSA looks at both the work and the earnings, and they have something called the comparability of work test. Test number 1, they're going to look at whether or not the self-employed person is providing significant services and earning substantial gainful income. If they are not, they fail test number 1. And then if they fail test number 2 and 3, their case will be move on. So test number 2 is a quick little test where they look at what the impaired self-employed person is doing compared to an unimpaired person with regard to skill, hours worked, energy output, productivity, responsibilities, duties, efficiency, all that stuff. They're going to look at that. And if under test 2, that self-employed worker who has a chronic illness fails, then we move on to test number 3, the worth of work test, where SSA essentially looks at another worker, unimpaired, who is working full-time for an employer in the general workforce doing the same type of work. They evaluate whether or not the individual who's self-employed and hobbling along is working and earning a substantial gainful amount based upon what that full-time worker is earning on a full-time basis. If test 3 fails, then the case is sent off to Disability Determination Services to determine whether or not they meet the standard for disability with their particular chronic illness. So in many cases, they're approved. I helped a gal the other day with Parkinson's, and she was approved. Her condition was severe, and the medical evidence supported that. So the compassionate allowance cases are terminal, and they are fast-tracked, and within 2 weeks' time, the decisions come back favorably. With chronic illnesses, the decisions can come back favorably. Work, especially self-employment, complicates things a little bit since SSA looks at both earnings and the kind of work being done. So get help. These rules are very complex, and the right approach could be all the difference between an approval or a denial. I'm Randy from Bragg Social Security Consulting. Set up your appointment at braggssc.com for a consultation. Let's get you taken care of. I'm here to help.